As a software engineer, I didn't have any doubts whatsoever that I'd lose my job during the last recession. However, as it looks like we might be heading into another recession, should we be worried? Whenever you turn on the news or flick through YouTube, it's hard not to see a news story about how everything seems to be falling apart. Stock markets, housing bubbles, inflation, energy prices. It feels like after COVID, the world will need a few years to get back to normal. Now, with the worst potential economic period in my lifetime about to play out, it's hard not to ask, how recession-proof are software engineering jobs? The focus of this video is going to be on the strategies and the tactics that you can apply today to help recession-proof your software engineering career. Programming has historically been known as a career path that pays really well and that also has very low unemployment levels. And I do not think we're suddenly going to start to see hordes of unemployed programmers sitting in the street begging for change. The programming industry is still very much in demand, and I do not think that in the long term this will change. However, I could imagine that within 2023, new job roles coming into the market could potentially cool off a little. Now, for the majority of people watching this video, I don't think you're going to be infected in the slightest, and my advice is simply carry on coding and things will be okay. However, it does not hurt to do a little bit of due diligence and ensure that your house is in order just in case the worst might happen. Within this notoriously hard to recruit for industry, it might be very easy to assume that all of that economic doom and gloom isn't going to affect you and that you're recession-proof. However, if you don't simply want to leave the status of your employment up to fate, then we need to adopt some principles and some tactics to make sure that we've got our best chance of getting through it and, more importantly, making as much money as possible. When trying to determine how recession-proof you actually are, one of the first things to consider is the health of the company that you currently work for. If the company is profitable and making money, your chances of being recession-proof increase. If the company is not making money though, your chances drop significantly. Now, it doesn't matter if you work in reception, you work at the board level, or you're the best coder to walk the planet. If your company is failing, not making money, and cannot afford to pay its bills, it will eventually go bankrupt. And fundamentally, if you're working for a failing company, you are at risk. Now, if you have genuine concerns that you're working for a failing company, you might want to jump ship before things get worse. However, I strongly recommend that you do some research first so you actually use data to base any potential future career decisions that you might want to make. For a lot of companies, it might be possible to check its profit and loss status online. If the company is publicly traded on the stock market, your company will need to release a quarterly financial to the market. You can use a financial tool like Simply Wall Street to get a report on the financial health of the company. This report will include things like a valuation, future growth potential, and a financial health outlook. If you work in a company in the UK or a private limited company, you can also head over to Companies House and use the Search Register tool to see your company accounts. To be clear, I'm definitely not some conspiracy theorist that has all my wealth in gold because I think the system's going to collapse and all the companies are going to go bankrupt. That's not going to happen. Realistically, a company going bankrupt is a pretty rare and extreme circumstance. What is more likely, though, is that when a company is struggling financially, it will have to reduce its outgoings. And typically, the fundamental way that companies reduce outgoings is to reduce headcount. So what is more likely to happen is that the company you're working for, if it is struggling, might have to go through one or more rounds of redundancies. I do not recommend that you waste any time trying to predict the future. There is no exact science or methodology that you can run that's going to guarantee if you're going to be impacted by redundancies or not. Instead, I recommend that you spend all your time and energy focusing on the things that you can control. And one of those is making sure that you're working on the right type of project. Within a company, there are two types of projects, essential and non-essential projects. Now, essential projects will include revenue-generating projects, a project that has guaranteed funding, or government-backed projects. And the chances of you being downsized if you work on one of these types of projects are a lot slimmer. No company wants to compromise that golden money-making goose. On the flip side, if you're currently in between projects or you work on a non-essential project, you might find yourself at a higher risk compared to some of the other teams. Now, if there is a possibility that you can get yourself transferred onto a more essential project, that could be a way to increase your recession-proofness. Obviously, you can still be working on an essential project and your team, unfortunately, can still be added into the redundancy process. So the next question we need to ask is, how likely are you within your team to be made redundant? Typically, new hires, entry-level and junior software developer roles will be the ones most at risk. This makes complete sense, as hiring good quality experienced people is much harder compared to hiring junior people. A recent study called Age Differences in Job Loss, Job Search and Reemployment confirmed this, as it found that people in the age range of roughly 35 to 50 are more likely to be kept during a redundancy process compared to the team members within the 25 to 35 age range bracket. So, you now have a framework to determine how risky you are of being made redundant at your current employer, and do with that information what you will. Now, personally, regardless if you're in a risk category or non-risk category, I think the most important thing that we can do is make sure that we set ourselves up for success in the future. And this means that if we do get made redundant, making sure today that you can find a new job as quickly and efficiently as possible. So let's look at the steps we need to do to ensure this. My first tip has nothing to do with career advice. Instead, it's centered on finance. Now, let's be real. If you got made redundant today, probably your biggest fear is going to be, how are you going to pay your bills, your mortgage, your rent, whatever that might be? And the answer to this is simple. Have an emergency fund. Now, if you pick up any good finance book, say like the Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey, one universal recommendation is to have a rainy day fund stashed away somewhere. Now, the usual advice is to have somewhere between 3 and 6 months worth of living expenses saved in cash. This means that in the worst case scenario, you don't have to take the first job that you see, you have some leverage. While there's talk of a recession coming up, this is a perfect time to review your spending habits. Cut down on anything you don't need. Kill your Spotify or YouTube subscriptions if you're not using them. Make sure that you're spending less than you earn. And more importantly, make sure you have enough savings to get you through any bad times. Another reason why you might be so worried about losing your job is that because your whole lifestyle is dependent on a single source of income, your salary. If your only income source is your salary, you're always going to be susceptible to being made redundant, whether it's in a recession or not. Now, there are plenty of videos on YouTube and articles on how to start a side hustle out there. And if you can diversify your income streams, again, you're going to be less impacted by any sudden changes in your career. As a developer, the simplest way to diversify your income stream is start doing some freelance work in your own time. Now, granted, this is going to add in a bunch of extra work to your life, which is definitely hard to manage at times. However, getting into the habit of finding work, building a reputation, and establishing useful contacts are valuable skills to have at your disposal. Sites like People Per Hour, Upwork, or Fiverr make it dead simple for you to get started freelancing today. After you set up a recurring payment into your emergency fund and you've looked at some side hustles, the next area where I think you should focus your attention is around building your brand inside the company. Now, what you want to do is build a reputation within your company that you're basically the best employee ever, and anyone would be stupid to let you go. And if there was redundancies, you want to be the last person they would consider. Start becoming more valuable to your employer is basically becoming a subject matter expert in the entirety of the company's code base. Basically, you want to be that go-to person that everyone comes to whenever they don't understand anything or they've got a problem. Now, granted, saying becoming a subject matter expert is easier said than done. Now, personally, I've managed this at a few companies that I've worked with, and the easiest way that I've found to get up to speed is to basically nominate yourself for all those crappy tasks. Now, we all know what I'm talking about here. When it comes to sprint planning, there's always a bunch of tasks that no one wants to do. It might be something like setting up the CI/CD pipeline, tracking down that impossible bug, working with that team that no one wants to, or setting up an integration that no one has any idea how it works. Now, it's these type of tasks which are going to make you a subject matter expert. It's because no one else understands them, no one else wants to, but if you're the person that does, you become indispensable. The second thing that you can do to make yourself even more invaluable to your employer is to learn the basics of the other non-developer roles within your team. So what I mean by this is, can you do some basic level of project management? Do you have the confidence to run the morning stand-up? Could you set up a backlog planning session? Do you know how to do Jiraing? Do you know how to create a burn down report so you can report progress to senior management? Could you do some level of CSS or back-end development work? Basically, the more different types of roles that you can do, the more invaluable you're going to become. The offset of this is also you're probably going to get paid a higher percent. You're going to get a pay rise because, again, you're becoming more valuable and you're adding more value to that company. Those two actions are probably the biggest impact things you can do to help ensure that you don't get made redundant in the worst case scenario. There's also another set of tasks which is focused around finding a new job. If you need to start job hunting, the first thing you'll need is an up-to-date CV. So what we want to do is make sure that it's up to date, it's got no spelling mistakes, and it's structured really nicely. Now, if you want to make sure that your CV is good, what I recommend is that you try and reach out to a few recruiters. Now, as long as you can make some money for recruiters, they're probably going to be really happy to help you. They see CVs day in, day out, so they can give you some pointers about what works and what doesn't. So step 1, update your CV. Another step is making sure that your LinkedIn profile is up to date. So what you want to do is make sure that you have good feedback on it. So you've been ranked highly for loads of skills. You have some personal endorsements. So maybe you want to reach out to previous people that you work with. You also want to make sure that all your career history is on there. It's all spelt right. And you have a good amount of connections. Just going to help the job offers in the future. My third tip is setting up job alerts now. So what you want to do is go through all the job sites. You want to set up a search based on the criteria you're thinking about. Maybe it's C# or JavaScript within 5 miles of your house, which gets paid over £5 an hour, whatever it might do. Then on most of these sites, you can set up alerts, which you're going to send to your email. Then what you want to do within your email program is go in there, set up some rules and some filters. So every single new job that comes in gets filtered into a folder called job. So in the worst case, if you get made redundant, all you have to do is go into your job folder and you're going to have a plethora of job opportunities there for you to pounce on straight away. The final thing that I think you should do to set yourself up for job hunting success is to work on building your external brand. So this time I'm going to focus on telling the world how great you are at software development, or how great that you know you are, because I know I'm fantastic. Now, obviously, in this path, there's loads of different things that you can do. Working on a Stack Overflow reputation, going on answering questions every day so you have thousands and thousands of reputation points just like John Skeet. Now, for me, when I was recruiting people, I always looked at their GitHub. So making sure that you have an up-to-date GitHub, that it's all filled in nicely, you have a lot of repositories, and most importantly, that you're actively, constantly committing to it. Not this, I've done it once just for a job interview, because people will know. Now, other things you can consider doing is creating an online portfolio. This isn't going to take you too much time, making sure that you have your own web space, selling your soul, selling your skills, selling everything, selling that you're awesome is going to help. Again, it makes you stand out. Now, you could go the more longer route. You could create some sort of blog, or potentially you could do what I'm doing right now and talk waffle on YouTube. Now, the problem with these kind of avenues are, yes, they're great. It's going to take you lots and lots of time. I'm recording this on a Saturday. My wife's angry with me. But the thing is, to build up, say, 1,000 people on YouTube, it's probably going to take you 12 months, maybe 2 years, whatever it might take. So you're probably not going to get that done in time if you need to find a job within the next 3 to 4 months. So I'd really recommend focusing on the things that you can control now and then working on those longer term activities afterwards. To conclude, if you've run through all the steps in my framework, and you've identified that you're working in a strong company on a strong project, you've got an emergency fund, you're working on all the internal branding, you've nailed the external branding, then you've got literally nothing to worry about. You're going to be one of the most employable people in the software industry. You are going to be a complete boss. Now, the reason why I did this video was I'm hoping it's given someone some food for thought, or at least some actionable insights that you can work on today to help you become recession-proof. If I'm honest, we work in software, so not that many homeless programmers. So we're all probably going to be okay, but I always think there's some good steps that you should start following. Now, if you found some value from this video, there's two things I ask of you. First, if you could smash on the subscribe button so you don't lose any of my future content. I release a new video every Sunday evening, specifically aimed at software engineers on how to become better at their jobs. If you have found value in this video, it does take me a long time to research, record and edit all my videos. So if you want to help me out with the magic YouTube algorithm, please click like, because it would mean a lot to me. Now, finally, if you have any thoughts or any ideas around how the rest of us become recession-proof, please leave a comment below. We're all in this together, so let's help the community. Otherwise, I hope you're having a fantastic day wherever you are. Until next Sunday, happy coding.